I maintain that Paul Thomas Anderson's American epic, There Will Be Blood, is the best film to ever be made in the history of cinema, and I doubt I will ever watch another movie that will surpass this film's mastery. That was the opening shot of There Will Be Blood, a slow fade in on the arid California hills, with a score from Johnny Greenwood that sounds like a horror movie, an introduction to hell. And in some sense, There Will Be Blood is a horror film. After Daniel Plainview breaks his leg, it is implied that he literally drags himself across that desert, drags himself across his own personal hell. Before I talk more about the movie itself, I want to tell you about my journey with this film. The year was 2019, and 15-year-old me had dropped by a thrift store to browse the movie section. Before long, I stumbled across a film I had never heard of before, titled There Will Be Blood. The DVD cover immediately grabbed my attention with a stylistic font choice and a beautifully lit portrait of Daniel Day-Lewis. I flipped the DVD over to find that the film had won 2 Oscars in 2008 for Best Acting and Best Cinematography. I didn't purchase that DVD, but I did put a hold on my local library's copy, as the library is where I watch most movies from. Once I got the film, I shortly thereafter went on a road trip with family where I watched it in what was probably the worst way I could have ever viewed it, on a portable DVD player. I did not enjoy the movie when I first saw it. I found myself staring out the window for at least half the runtime, thinking the film was boring, overrated, and just a whole lot of nothing. After that first viewing, I didn't really think too much about the film. For about 6 months, that is. I found myself casually thinking about this movie half a year after I first saw it. I kept asking myself, why is this movie on my mind? Why do I keep thinking about it? Thinking about this movie nearly became an obsession for me. I finally decided I wanted to rewatch this movie, so I ordered the Blu-ray edition from Amazon one day, convinced I was missing something. And boy oh boy, was I missing something. After that second viewing, There Will Be Blood immediately became my favorite movie of all time. And it still is. Spoilers ahead. If you haven't seen There Will Be Blood, go watch it right now. There Will Be Blood's mastery is in its restrained simplicity. It's a film that treats the viewer as an intelligent individual, expecting you to pay attention, which is quite a refreshing feeling after having an abundant amount of films in the last decade that think moviegoers are stupid, with expositional dialogue explaining every little detail for you. The first 15 minutes of There Will Be Blood is proof of this, not containing a single line of dialogue. Show, don't tell, could not be a more accurate description. Every time I rewatch this movie, I find myself picking up new details that I have never seen before, which in turn makes this movie extremely rewatchable. At the core of There Will Be Blood, the film is a dialogue about the relationship between capitalism and religion. The first hint we get that points us to this idea takes place during a scene after Daniel and his crew have struck oil for the first time. HW's biological father pours a bucket of oil into a pool of black gold, then dips his finger in and baptizes HW in the oil, in the blood of lamb. Daniel Plainview's business is his religion. One of the posters for There Will Be Blood shows an oil derrick built with a cross, reinforcing this idea. Daniel even says this near the end of the film.
Every day, I drink the blood of lamb from bandaged tract.
On the other hand, Daniel Plainview's adversary in There Will Be Blood, Eli Sunday, is a man whose religion is his business. Eli is the preacher for the Church of the Third Revelation, and he makes his church services more of a show than an actual sermon by sensationalizing the whole gathering. He supposedly casts out demons from an elderly woman with arthritis and also baptizes Daniel in a violent and performance-like fashion. His church in the small town of Little Boston is really the only community gathering, and Eli capitalizes on this by incentivizing people to tithe by putting on a show.
That was one goddamn hell of a show.
Near the end of the film, it is proven that Eli is nothing but a businessman when he verbally blasphemes the Lord when promised money from Daniel Plainview. There Will Be Blood is a timeless story about greed, ambition, and family in the early days of American capitalism. Each and every aspect of this film is masterful, from the cinematography, the soundtrack, to the acting, and I have no complaints about any of it.